Which country is the real superpower? The answer to this question can reveal the reason for the presence of Russia in Syria. The United States has a huge lead by the most important measures of national power. China is the only country that comes close, and America still has 3 times China's wealth and 5 times its military capabilities. That gap would take decades to close even if things go badly for the United States. Russia's military budget is 10 times smaller than America's. Its economy is smaller than that of Texas, and its population will shrink 30% over the next 30 years. During the last decade, the United States improved its relations with Middle East countries except Iran and Syria. Today, United States have tens of military bases in the Middle East, and Israel is its most powerful ally. So losing another ally will be a great defeat for Russian foreign policy. To understand Russia's role in Syria, you must know a particular Russian word, dertshavnost. Great powerness or unquestionable sphere of influence. For many Russians, this word is no longer synonymous with Russia. Vladimir Putin, in his role as Russia's strongman, wants to change this and sees Syria as an opportunity. Despite a weak hand to play, he wants to end the traditional balance of power and alliances and to reassert Russia's place in the world. There are long-standing ties between Moscow and Syria, particularly with the Assads, which lend credence to Russia's presence. The lease on the naval base in Tartus was renewed for a further 49 years in 2017. This is of vital strategic importance for the Russian Navy, as it is their only notable facility outside the former Soviet bloc. Additionally, should relations with Turkey decline to the point where the Bosporus Strait is closed, the Russian Navy and its supply line would be cut off beyond the Black Sea. By having a base of operations from which to launch strikes into Syria, Russia has also been able to project the image of being a strong and capable military power, whilst simultaneously taking advantage of the opportunity to gain fighting proficiency. Since 2011, intense fighting and mass desertion had weakened the Syrian Arab army. Even the support of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the deployment of Iranian militias and Russian mercenaries, and regular shipments of Russian weaponry had not been enough to stop the advance of the opposition and radical armed groups. By September 2015, the Syrian Arab army lost control over Idlib, Al-Raqqa, Deir az-Zor, Hasakeh, Dira, and Quneitra, and was struggling to control Hama, Homs, and the Damascus countryside. The provincial capital of Raqqa, with its strategic oil and water resources, had become the main stronghold of the rising ISIS. On September 30, 2015, the Russian Federation formally entered the Syrian civil war as President Bashar al-Assad's rule was increasingly under threat. The Russian intervention stopped the advance of the opposition, which was backed by the West, Turkey, and the Gulf. Russia's superior military power managed to shift the dynamics on the ground in Syria relatively quickly. Although the declared goal of its operation was to fight terrorist groups, the Russian army, along with its Syrian allies, first targeted groups of the moderate opposition backed by the West, who at that time were already suffering from internal divisions and having to fight on 2 fronts, against Damascus and ISIL. Less than a year later, Russian troops, along with Iranian-backed militias and Syrian government forces, laid siege on East Aleppo, and by November, forced opposition armed groups to surrender and leave the city. This was a turning point in the conflict, as it marked the steady retreat of opposition forces and ushered in a new axis between Russia, Iran, and Turkey, seeking to resolve the Syrian crisis while excluding the West and Arab powers. In the span of 5 years, Russia not only managed to preserve the Syrian government but also largely eliminated and marginalized the moderate opposition. Russia's perceived success in Syria also encouraged other countries in the Middle East to seek improved relations with Moscow amid the U.S. pivot out of the region. The leaders of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, the Kurdistan region of Iraq, Sudan, and Israel have all paid visits to Moscow in recent years. Despite the increased diplomatic engagement in the region and the prestige on the international scene that has come with it, Russia has not really achieved the same level of influence the US has had. In addition, the continued Turkish and American military presence in resource-rich northern Syria also guarantees Ankara and Washington a say in the future of Syria. It also prevents the advance of Syrian government forces and their Iranian and Russian allies to re-establish Damascus's full territorial control. From the Russian point of view, intervention in Syria has proved highly fruitful. Politically, Moscow has engaged in military action without any significant diplomatic ramifications, have fundamentally guaranteed Syria's support for them in the UN, maintained relations with Iran and Saudi Arabia, and, indeed, more recently, offered to act as an intermediary between Israel and Syria to de-escalate tensions, even providing neutral forces along the Israeli-Syrian border. Russia received the best possible gift from the Trump administration right before Christmas and now has a free hand to determine the future of its troubled Middle Eastern ally. Russia entered the Syrian war amid an economic crisis due to slumping oil prices and the fallout of the Ukrainian crisis. This initially caused domestic concern about the cost of the war. According to the government, the first 6 months of the operation cost $464 million, which compared with the U.S. spending in Iraq, which was nearly $2 trillion in 16 years, was a relatively modest number. The Russian government has presented the operation in Syria as an opportunity to test and promote Russian weaponry. In 2017, the Defense Ministry said some 600 new weapons had been tested in military action in Syria. While economic opportunities have not been that significant for the Russian economy, the political leverage that Russia acquired with its intervention in Syria opened the door to increased economic cooperation with other countries in the region. In recent years, Russia has signed investment pledges and deals worth billions of dollars with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar. Russian companies have also acquired lucrative energy contracts in Egypt, Lebanon, the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and Turkey. Apart from all these, after about 10 years of war in Syria, looks like the end is near. What do you think about Russia's presence in Syria? Do you think Russia's presence was good for Syria and the Syrian people? Or,